Hi, good morning. Welcome to another KBC vlog. As you can see today, it's coming on location, and some of you might recognise where I am. I'll leave that as a little guessing game till the end of the vlog today. I want to talk to you this morning or today about a passage in Matthew chapter 7. The book that we're using for the basis of these vlogs is called The Good Book by a guy called Devin Spoo, looking at various chapters in the life of the Christian which are going to help us as we read through the Bible. The title that is given to today's chapter from Matthew chapter 7 is Life Over the Long Haul. I'm actually going to borrow another title from Eugene Peterson, who wrote a wonderful book called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. And really that's a great description of what the Christian faith life journey ought to be like for each of us. It is a long obedience in the same direction. One quote that I'll use from the book, and then I'll put the book away, but he talks about in the early days of the transportation being developed from the east to the west coast of America, and there was a new transcontinental railroad being built. And early on in the project, a handful of the project's investors suggested a celebration to launch the construction. But one of the major financiers, a man called Collis Huntington, objected to these festivities. And he said, if you want to jubilate over driving the first spike, go ahead and do it. I don't. Anybody can drive the first spike, but there are many months of labour and unrest between the first and the last spike. And of course, the picture that he's trying to get us thinking about there is that our faith life does not begin and end on the day that we become a Christian. Far from it. Our salvation is assured, our place in heaven is guaranteed, and that's certainly a cause for rejoicing. But really, when we trust Jesus, we're just getting started. This chapter is the final of the 3 chapters containing what we know as the Sermon on the Mount, and I know that Joe and Gary have helpfully given us some of those thoughts from the first couple of chapters. But as you read through chapter 7, it's almost Jesus concluding this sermon with guidelines for living. If you follow these instructions, your life will go well. You will know the closeness of God. So I just want to pick out one or two of the highlights. It's all highlights actually, but for the purposes of this vlog and not keeping you too long, let me just pick out one or two. Do not judge. If you do, you'll be judged the same way and by the same measure. He uses this almost comedic picture of someone having a problem because someone has a speck in their eye, but actually the person making the comment has a log in their own eye. And of course, although it's a comedy picture that draws in our mind, the point is about hypocrisy. Christians are not to be hypocrites. Do not give what is holy to dogs. Do not throw your pearls before swine. Sometimes it's difficult to know, isn't it, how much to say, what to share as a Christian with our non-Christian friends and colleagues and neighbours. Sometimes we have to make that judgment call and it's not always easy. Then we have these tremendous words about prayer. Ask and it will be given. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. Sometimes we give up, don't we? And yet Jesus says, persevere, stick at it, hang in there in prayer, and you'll see things happen. Then we come to perhaps the most famous line in this chapter, and maybe even in the whole Sermon on the Mount. Treat people the same way you want them to treat you. But that's just basic human courtesy, isn't it? And Jesus highlights that for us. He talks about a narrow gate and a broad gate. A narrow gate that leads to life, a broad gate that leads to destruction. Sadly, in our generation, we're seeing even in churches that broad gate being preached, where the message goes out that God will welcome everyone into heaven. And clearly we know that Jesus said, I am the way, the truth and the life. No man comes to me except through the Father. So there are choices to be made in our lives. There is a narrow gate. There will be a day of reckoning. And Jesus says, watch out for false prophets. You will know them by their fruits. And that's a key reminder to us, isn't it? To be not just swallowing everything that people say, even from a pulpit, even from the pulpit at KBC. We need to have our radar switched on. We need to know our Bibles so that we can hold those who preach to account. And I do pray that at KBC we try and uphold that inerrancy and supremacy of the Word of God at all times. And so do be on your guard. Jesus then says, not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter heaven. Well, that puts paid to those who believe that everyone will. And he says, not everyone will, but he who does the will of my Father. And so it's incumbent on us to know God's will in our lives and to follow that pattern and that purpose in our lives. Jesus then concludes, he says, if you hear these words of mine and then go away and act on them, you're wise. You're like a wise man who built his house on a rock. What's this talking about? It's talking about foundations, foundational living. Getting the foundations of our life right spiritually is as important as getting the foundations of our houses right. If you are worried about your foundations, you go and get them checked out, don't you? You get a builder along, an architect along, and if they're found to be solid and robust, then happy days. You can sleep well at night. But if you have them examined and they're found to be dodgy or faulty, you would get them dealt with, wouldn't you? A long obedience in the same direction simply means that we are not ever going to have a day off of trying to get to know Jesus better. We're not going to have a day off of living our Christian lives in the full gaze of those who are watching us. Yes, life over the long haul, a long obedience in the same direction. I trust that you know God's presence each day. Good days, bad days, in the middle days. He's always with you. Well, where am I today? I'm in Llanfyr, just down by the sea wall here, and the waves are coming in, and it's a beautiful sunny day. I hope you're having a good day, and look forward to seeing you very soon. God bless you. Bye-bye.